Valentina had a busy day. As always, she left the office exhausted, but with that feeling of duty accomplished. Work was her escape valve, her refuge. She spent hours immersed in projects and deadlines, trying not to think about the coldness that had taken over her marriage in recent months. On the way home, she stopped at the market to buy some things for dinner. She wanted to prepare something special to rekindle a little of her connection with Leonardo. She still believed they could overcome this difficult phase. After all, they had been married for almost 10 years. They had a history together, and Valentina didn't want to give up so easily. When she got home, silence enveloped her. It felt strange. Leonardo was usually watching TV or on the phone, complaining about work. But that night, everything was quiet, strange. She walked down the hallway with her heart racing, feeling an inexplicable butterflies in her stomach. When she opened the bedroom door, she found a scene she never imagined she would see. Leonardo had his back to her, closing a suitcase. "What's going on?" Her voice was shaky. He turned around slowly, without any expression of guilt on his face. He took a deep breath and, as calmly as possible, said, "I fell in love with another woman. I want a divorce." The words fell on Valentina like a punch. She blinked several times, trying to understand if she had heard correctly. She was short of breath. Her heart was beating wildly. "What?" she managed to ask, feeling the ground disappear beneath her feet. Leonardo sighed, as if he were bored. He didn't seem shaken or sad. On the contrary, he seemed relieved. "I don't love you anymore. There's no point in continuing to pretend. I'm with someone else, and I want to live this new story." Valentina felt tears burn her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Her mind was spinning, trying to understand. "What do you mean? Since when? Who was this woman? And why was he speaking so indifferently?" "You're joking, right? This is a phase, Leonardo. We can solve it." Her voice trailed off, despair starting to grow. He laughed, a cold, emotionless laugh. "There's no phase, Valentina. I've already decided." She felt a tightness in her chest, a pain that seemed to suffocate her. Every memory, every moment they had together crumbled before her. They had plans, dreams, and now he was throwing it all away? "But what about us? Our story? 10 years together, and you just throw me away?" "I tried to hold on for a while," he replied, shrugging. "But when love ends, there's no reason to insist anymore." Tears finally escaped Valentina's eyes, and she hated it. She hated appearing fragile in front of a man who no longer cared. "Who is she?" Leonardo hesitated for a moment, but then answered without any guilt. "Her name is Natalia." Natalia! The name echoed in Valentina's mind like thunder. Who was this woman who had stolen her husband? But the worst part was yet to come. Leonardo took a deep breath and, without any trace of empathy, continued. "And there's one more thing. She's pregnant. I'm going to be a father." The impact of that sentence was like a knife in the chest. The air escaped her lungs, and her legs threatened to give out. She and Leonardo had been trying to get pregnant for years. They had undergone tests, treatments, consultations, and nothing. Now, he was going to tell her he was going to have a child with another woman. She opened her mouth to respond, but she couldn't. Her world had fallen apart in a matter of minutes. Valentina stood there, still, staring at Leonardo, as if she expected him to say that it was all just a misunderstanding. But he didn't. On the contrary, he picked up the suitcase and placed it next to the door, as if he had already planned everything. "I can't believe you're doing this to me," she murmured, feeling her hands tremble. Leonardo snorted, as if he was tired of that conversation. "Valentina, let's not prolong this. I've made my decision, and there's no going back." She felt anger begin to take the place of pain. How could he act so coldly? As if she were an old piece of furniture that he decided to replace with a new one? "Do you really want to throw away 10 years of marriage for someone you barely know?" Her voice was choked, but firm. "I love her. And more than that, she gave me something you never could." That sentence was the last straw. "She gave me something you never could." The blow was cruel, dirty. He was talking about the baby. The pain in Valentina's chest turned into a lump in her throat, but she refused to cry in front of him. "And what do I do now?" she asked, crossing her arms, trying to hide her vulnerability. Leonardo shrugged. "You can stay here for a few days until you find another place. But I want to resolve everything as quickly as possible. Natalia wants us to live together before the baby is born." Valentina's mouth fell open in shock. "So that's it? You want me to move out of our house to make room for her?" Leonardo looked away, impatient. "Look, I don't want to argue. I'm just being honest." Honest? He was being cruel. Valentina felt a mixture of feelings exploding inside her. Anger, sadness, humiliation. Every corner of that house bore the mark of their history. The photos on the wall, the furniture they had chosen together, the table where they had shared so many meals. And now he wanted her to simply leave so another woman could take her place? She clenched her fists. She would not give him the pleasure of seeing her beg. "I will leave, but not because you want me to. I will leave because I will not stay in a place where I am not welcome." Leonardo nodded, as if he had already expected this answer. "That's better." She walked to the wardrobe and began to pick up some clothes. Her heart was tight, her mind racing. Where would she go? How would she start over after so many years dedicated to a marriage that was now dust? As she threw her things into a suitcase, she heard Leonardo's voice behind her. "You don't have to take everything now. Take it easy." Take it easy? Did he really think he could smooth it over? She laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. "Don't worry, Leonardo. I won't stay here a second longer than I have to." He didn't answer. He just stood there, watching her, as if he had already gotten over everything and was just waiting for her to finish. As she picked up her suitcase, Valentina looked around the room one last time. Memories came rushing back, but she didn't let herself fall apart. If he wanted to see her weak, he wouldn't have that pleasure. She walked to the door, took a deep breath, and left. The cold night air hit her face as she pulled her suitcase along the sidewalk. She picked up the phone and, without thinking twice, called her best friend, Mariana. "Girlfriend, I need a place to stay." The silence on the other end was brief. Mariana knew Valentina well enough to understand that something very serious had happened. "Come here now." She got into a taxi, and as soon as she sat in the back seat, the tears she had been holding back the whole time finally fell. The driver, a gray-haired man, looked at her through the rearview mirror and asked gently, "Are you okay, my daughter?" She took a deep breath, trying to control her tears, but the truth was that no, she wasn't okay. Her marriage was over. Her husband had left her for another woman, and now she was completely lost. Valentina got out of the taxi in front of Mariana's building with her suitcase in her hands and her heart in pieces. The door opened before she could even ring the bell. Mariana, in her pajamas and with disheveled hair, looked at her with a mixture of concern and anger. "What happened?" she asked, pulling Valentina inside. As soon as she walked through the door, Valentina collapsed into her friend's arms. The pain she had held in all day burst into sobs. "He left me, Mariana. He left me for someone else, and she's pregnant." Her friend's silence was cutting. Mariana hugged her tighter. "That scoundrel," she murmured, her eyes sparkling with indignation. They sat on the couch, and Valentina told her everything, from Leonardo's coldness to the fact that he wanted her to leave the house to make room for the other woman. "You're not going to be alone in this, do you hear me?" Mariana said, holding her hands. "Stay here with me as long as you need." Valentina nodded, still dazed. That night, she slept on the couch, or rather, she tried to sleep. But her mind wouldn't stop. Had she really been discarded just like that, without further ado? The next morning, she woke up to the smell of coffee. Mariana, already ready for work, sat down next to her. "What are you going to do now?" she asked carefully. Valentina took a deep breath, holding the hot cup between her hands. "I have no idea." She had no home, no plan. Everything she knew fell apart overnight. "You know what?" Mariana crossed her arms. You always lived for this marriage. You always put Leonardo first. Now it's time to think about yourself." Valentina frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, it's time for you to get back on your feet. Have your own house, your own money. You're an incredible professional, Val, and you've been idle for too long." Valentina swallowed hard. Architecture was her passion, but Leonardo always made her feel like she didn't need to work. Now, without him, she had no choice. "But who would hire me after so long away from the market?" Mariana smiled sideways. "Lucas, my boss, is looking for an architect. The position is open, and you have experience." Valentina blinked, surprised. "Are you serious?" "Completely. And before you make excuses, I've already scheduled an interview for you tomorrow." Valentina laughed through her nose. "You don't waste time, do you? And you can't miss this chance." She sighed, feeling the weight of uncertainty. But deep down, she knew Mariana was right. That afternoon, Valentina made a decision. She wouldn't just sit around waiting for the pain to go away. She was going to get up and start over, even though she didn't really know where to start. Hours later, she gathered up the courage, and she returned to the house where she had lived for so many years to gather her things. Her heart sank when she entered and saw Leonardo and Natalia on the couch, as if everything was normal. She walked to the bedroom, gathered her clothes, documents, and a handful of souvenirs she wanted to keep. Before leaving, she saw Natalia run her hand over her belly, smiling smugly. Anger burned inside her, but Valentina maintained her posture. She was not going to give the impression of defeat. When she walked through the front door with her bags, Leonardo finally spoke up. "Where are you going to stay?" She lifted her chin and answered without hesitation, "Wherever I want." And she left without looking back. Her new beginning had begun. Valentina left the house she once called home with her bag in hand and a heavy heart, but she did not look back. She refused to show Leonardo any sign of weakness. He had made his choice, and now it was her turn to choose her own path. Back at Mariana's apartment, she tried to focus on the interview the next day. It was her chance to start over, to prove to herself that she didn't need Leonardo to move forward. But that night, sleep came in fits and starts. Her thoughts played like a movie, replaying every cruel word he had said. The next day, Mariana accompanied her to the office where she worked. "Relax, you're going to rock," she said, smiling. Valentina forced a smile. She wanted to believe it. She joined the company, was introduced to the team, and felt that old love for architecture awaken again. She talked to Lucas, Mariana's boss, and the interview went better than she had imagined. He looked at her portfolio and said, "I like your work. Let's do a test." It was a start. On the way out, still feeling nervous, Valentina decided to stop at a cafe to breathe. She ordered a cappuccino and left distracted, thinking about the future, when she bumped into someone and spilled all the coffee on her own blouse. "Oh shit," she mumbled, trying to clean the stain. "Oh my God, I'm sorry," a male voice said. She looked up and saw a tall man with brown eyes and a regretful smile. "It was my fault, I was distracted," Valentina said, embarrassed. He took a napkin and offered it. "At least let me buy you another coffee." She hesitated for a second, but accepted. They sat down in the coffee shop, and he introduced himself. "My name is Benjamin." "Valentina." They talked for a few minutes, and Valentina realized that for the first time since Leonardo left her, she was actually laughing. Benjamin was light, funny, and had a good energy. "Do you work near here?" he asked. "I'm trying to start over," he said, smiling awkwardly. "So we have something in common. I'm starting over too." Valentina raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Benjamin hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "My wife left me. She said she didn't want this life anymore, so she packed up her things and left." Valentina froze for a second. She knew this pain all too well. Benjamin smiled humorlessly. "But maybe that was a blessing in disguise. Now I can build something new." Valentina stared at him for a moment. Maybe, just maybe, the universe was trying to tell her something. "I'm trying to believe that too," she admitted. Benjamin smiled, and at that moment, Valentina felt something different. It wasn't love, it wasn't passion, it was hope. She left that cafe with a new lease of life. The past still hurt, but for the first time, she felt that the future could be better. In the following days, Valentina immersed herself completely in her work. Lucas invited her for a trial period, and determined to prove her worth, she gave it her all. Architecture had always been her passion, but after so much time away from the market, she feared she wouldn't be up to it. However, as the days passed, she rediscovered herself. The sound of pencils gliding over paper, the adrenaline of thinking of creative solutions for each project, it rekindled something inside her. The professional Valentina was back. "You have talent," Lucas said, analyzing one of her projects. "And a very detailed view. I think we made a good choice." Valentina smiled. "Thank you. I really needed this chance." He nodded. "Now tell me, how are you feeling about this new beginning?" She thought for a moment. There were nights when loneliness still weighed on her, when she remembered Leonardo and everything they had been through. But somehow, she was learning to move on. "I think I'm finding myself again." And it was true. A meeting that moved her after a long day at the office, Valentina decided to stop by the supermarket before going home. While she was choosing some products, she felt someone approaching. "I hope you didn't spill another coffee today." She turned around and found Benjamin smiling at her. "Oh, hi," she said, surprised. "No, I managed to stay dry today." He laughed. "That's good. If you need help to carry the bags, you already know who to call." She realized that she liked his presence. Benjamin had a light energy, something that made her feel comfortable. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "I came to buy ingredients for dinner. My daughter insists that I need to learn how to cook better." Valentina blinked. "Do you have a daughter?" "Yes, Sophia, 6 years old. She is my greatest motivation." Valentina smiled, feeling something warm inside her. "I bet she is charming." Benjamin nodded. "And demanding," he joked. "If you want, you can come to dinner with us one day and see for yourself." She hesitated for a second, but then answered, "I'll think about it." They said goodbye, and as she walked home, Valentina realized something. For the first time, she hadn't thought about Leonardo all day. Maybe, just maybe, the past was finally behind her. Over the next few days, Valentina's life began to change in subtle but significant ways. The work was flowing, her performance was being praised by Lucas, and the team was starting to trust her more and more. She no longer felt that initial fear of not being able to handle it. After all, she knew what she was capable of. But what caught her attention the most was how often Benjamin appeared on her path. At the market, at the coffee shop near the office, even on the street when she went out for lunch. Was it coincidence or destiny? "Are you stalking me?" she joked one day when she met him again at the bakery. He smiled sideways. "Actually, I think we just have the same habits. Or maybe the universe is trying to tell you something." Valentina laughed, but deep down, the idea kept hammering away in her mind. A dinner that changed everything that night. When she got home, she received an unexpected message. It was Benjamin. "Benjamin, the dinner offer is still on. Sophia wants to impress an architect with her drawings. What do you think?" She stared at her cell phone screen for a while, thinking, why not? Valentina took a deep breath and typed, "Valentina, okay, but only if the food is approved by Sophia." Benjamin, deal. Hours later, she was at his house, feeling an unexpected warmth in her chest when she saw the small apartment decorated with children's drawings and toys scattered on the floor. "Are you the architect, Aunt?" Sophia asked, her eyes shining. "Yes, and I heard that you also draw very well." Sophia took out a notebook and showed her doodles of colorful little houses. It was simple but charming. "I think you have talent," Valentina said, smiling. The night went on with laughter, conversation, and a lightness that Valentina had not felt in a long time. Benjamin was not only kind, but a great father. He took care of Sophia with a sincere affection, something Valentina had never seen in Leonardo. And, for the first time, she felt that perhaps she could make room for something new in her life. When she said goodbye that night, Benjamin held her hand for a brief moment and said, "You are good for us." Valentina went home with a smile on her face. Maybe, just maybe, destiny was really paving a new path for her. Days turned into weeks, and Valentina was no longer the woman who left the house where she had lived for so long in tears. Her work was thriving. She felt more secure, and above all, she was beginning to allow herself to be happy again. And Benjamin? Well, he was no longer just a coincidence in her life. Ever since that dinner, his and Sophia's presence had become something natural. A lunch here, a walk there. Little by little, Valentina realized that she cared about them more than she imagined. One afternoon, at the office, Lucas called her for a chat. "Valentina, I want you to present the new project to one of the investors. He needs to trust our team, and you're the right person to convince him." She swallowed hard. "Me? Yes, you're the best for this." The challenge was enormous, but she accepted. The night before the meeting, Benjamin noticed that she was nervous and showed up at her apartment door with a surprise. "I thought an impromptu dinner could help you relax." Valentina smiled, feeling that warmth in her chest. "You're impossible, and you're going to rock tomorrow." The next morning, she arrived prepared for the presentation. The project was a major urban revitalization project, and she knew that every detail was crucial. But as soon as she entered the meeting room, her heart stopped. Sitting at the table, analyzing documents, was Benjamin. "What do you mean?" she whispered in disbelief. He smiled at the corner of his mouth. "I'm the investor." Valentina was speechless for a few seconds, but soon recovered. She had a job to do. The meeting began, and for the first time, Valentina felt completely confident. She explained every detail, answered all the questions Benjamin and the other investors had. When she finished, Benjamin looked at her with a sparkle in his eyes. "The project is excellent. I think we can move forward. Valentina sighed in relief, but she also felt something different in that exchange of glances. Benjamin trusted her, not only as an architect, but as someone who had the strength to start over. As they were leaving, he approached her and said softly, "I told you would rock." And at that moment, she realized she had truly won. The following days passed like a whirlwind. The project was closed, and Valentina was now a key player in the company. For the first time in a long time, she felt valued and in control of her own life. But fate still had one last test in store for her. One afternoon, after leaving work, Valentina decided to stop by the mall to buy some things for her apartment. She wanted to transform that simple space into a real home. As she walked through the hallways, she felt a shiver. A familiar voice echoed behind her. "Valentina." She turned around slowly, and her heart raced. It was Leonardo. He looked different, thinner, with deep circles under his eyes. In his arms, he was carrying a small baby who was sleeping peacefully. "What do you want?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. Leonardo hesitated, but then sighed. "I was wrong, Valentina. I threw everything away, and now I'm paying for it." She crossed her arms, feeling a mix of disbelief and irony. "Really? And what happened to the perfect family you chose?" He lowered his gaze. "Natalia left me. She said she didn't want this life. She packed up her things and left, leaving me alone with the baby." Valentina felt a shock of reality. The woman he had destroyed a marriage for had abandoned him. "I was an idiot," he continued, his voice trembling. "You were everything to me, and I threw it away for an illusion." Valentina watched him for a few seconds. Before, that scene would have destroyed her. She would have cried, tried to understand, looked for a way to fix everything. But now, she only felt nothing. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but can you give me a chance? Can we try again?" Valentina took a deep breath, analyzing that man who was once her world. Now, he seemed so small compared to the woman she had become. Then, with a firm voice and a serene look, she answered, "You abandoned me when I needed you most, and now I'm the one who doesn't want you anymore." She saw the shock on his face, but she didn't wait for anything else. She turned around and walked on. Leonardo was now part of a past that no longer had any place in her future. Valentina left that mall feeling a relief she never imagined she would feel. Meeting Leonardo didn't destroy her. On the contrary, it only proved that she was completely healed from what had once hurt her so much. As she walked to the parking lot, she felt her cell phone vibrate. It was Benjamin. "Benjamin, I just got off work. Do you want to have dinner with me and Sophia?" She smiled, feeling a familiar warmth in her chest. "Valentina, yes, I do. I'm going." Months passed, and Valentina's life took a turn she never imagined the day she was kicked out of her house. She and Benjamin were officially together. The relationship grew naturally, without rushing, without fear. It was different. It was light. Sophia called her Auntie Val, and Valentina loved her spontaneous affection. But the greatest gift of her life was yet to come. One morning, Valentina held a small pregnancy test in her hands. Her heart was pounding, and her eyes were filled with tears. She was pregnant. For a moment, memories of a painful past came flooding back. Years of trying to get pregnant with Leonardo and never succeeding. His look of disappointment. The pain of feeling inadequate. But now it was different. Benjamin entered the room and found her standing there, holding the test. "Are you okay?" he asked, worried. Valentina looked up and smiled. "I'm pregnant." Benjamin's eyes lit up. He smiled hugely and hugged her tightly. "That's amazing, Val." Sophia, who was playing in the living room, ran over to them when she saw the scene. "What's wrong? Is there a party?" Benjamin laughed and picked his daughter up. "Yes, my princess. You're going to have a little brother or sister." Sophia's eyes lit up. "Really? I've always wanted a baby here at home." Valentina felt her heart overflow with happiness. She never imagined that, after everything, life would give her such a great gift. The months passed like a breeze. Valentina's belly grew, and with it, the certainty that life was finally where it should be. She and Benjamin decided to buy a house together, a real home, full of love and security. Sophia was excited about the baby's arrival and helped decorate the room, choosing every detail with care. "Can I draw a rainbow on the wall?" the girl asked, holding the colored pencils. "Of course you can, princess," Valentina replied, smiling. Sophia ran to start drawing, and Benjamin wrapped Valentina in a hug. "You're everything I've ever wanted," he whispered. She closed her eyes, feeling a pure and true love like never before. One afternoon, while walking with Benjamin and Sophia in the park, Valentina saw Leonardo in the distance. He was alone, sitting on a bench, looking dejected. If it had been before, it would have shaken her. But now, he was just a memory of the past. Benjamin noticed where she was looking and squeezed her hand. "Is there a problem?" She smiled, shaking her head. "None." And for the first time, Valentina felt that everything had happened exactly as it should. The day of the birth arrived, and everything went well. Valentina gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, Isadora. When she held her daughter in her arms for the first time, she felt tears fall. It was as if every pain, every tear she had shed in the past had led to this perfect moment. Benjamin and Sophia were by her side, and she knew that she finally had the family she had always dreamed of. A few months later, in an outdoor lunch, Mariana, Lucas, and other friends celebrated with Valentina and Benjamin. "Who would have thought you would make such a turnaround?" "Huh?" Mariana joked, raising her glass. Valentina laughed, looking at everything around her. The love, the friendship, the family she had built. "Life takes turns," she said, raising her glass. "And sometimes it takes us exactly where we should be." The sun set on the horizon, painting the sky golden, while laughter echoed through the backyard. Valentina had started over, and now she was finally happy.